Contenders. I'm your host Viency, and I'm here with Nadrah, my co-host for today.
Yeah, hi, I'm Nadrah. I'm the co-host for today. Since Ling is sick, so I'm subbing in for her.
Yeah, Nadrah, she's our project manager, so she very kindly saving the day for us today. Our theme for today is horror comics, and we have two very interesting comics to talk about. The first is the iconic Uzumaki by Junji Ito, and the second one, which is a very lovely Singaporean title, is, pardon my pronunciation, Geungsi by Sean Lam. To join us in our conversation today, we have with us the amazing Wayne Rée.
Hi guys.
Ooh. So he's the host of horror storytelling podcast Ghost Maps, and he's also the now award-winning writer of Work-Life Balance.
Here's the book. Here's Work-Life Balance.
Yes.
Sorry, let me rephrase that. Here's the multiple award-winning book.
Multiple
Work-Life
award, yes,
Balance.
two.
That still feels very weird for me to say, just so you guys know.
Gotta be proud of it, man.
Oh, we're very proud, but it's still like a shock for me and Ben. Like both of us were holding the trophy and going, this is real, right? Yeah. Okay, then we passed it to our editor because we were like, we're gonna drop this.
Yeah, I think this is a good point to like start talking about our books and dive right in, because this has like all these creatures and folkloric creatures, and like the Geungsi is one such like local like folkloric creature as well. Before we start, right, I think we should do a ranking. We should do our ranking.
Let's do it.
Dive right in.
Yep.
Okay. So we're gonna do the ranking first, and then after that we'll go into why we think it's that way. Okay. So the first one, let's start with the Singaporean word lah. Singapore, right? Red Dot Comics then. Okay. 3, 2, 1.
What did everyone?
Ooh, bad.
What do you?
Can.
Okay. So I'm not alone. I need the caveat as well.
Okay.
It's technically I'm not putting up Ken La. I'm putting up Ken La 0.5. I'll say why later.
I'd say it's fair. It's fair. It's about there also for me.
I'll have a lot of caveats today.
Okay, Ken. I think Nadrah later you'll need to explain why first.
Okay.
Why you think it's best. And then, but before that, we'll do the second one. We'll do Uzumaki. Okay? So you prepare our answer.
I hope y'all can hear the shuffling of our signs
It's
to build
ASMR.
up tension.
Okay.
Ready?
3, 2, 1.
I'm done.
0.5 as well.
Ooh.
Wait, what? Ooh.
Why am I the odd one here, guys?
Oh, it's good. He's good. Special. Okay.
Debate.
That means you must go first.
Oh, shit.
Okay.
Alright.
Let's talk about Uzumaki first. Why should?
Because Uzumaki has a lot of like details on it. I mean, as an artist, I appreciate that because I did try to do similar to those details, and I just cannot imitate it. And then like having to like draw a thick book with that much details takes so much determination and commitment. And I'm just like, wow, I admire something like that.
You can show the camera how thick the book is.
Let me.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's a break, man.
Yeah. See.
So this book originally, it was released in 3 volumes. It came out in 1998.
Yep.
And they recently only started releasing like the omnibus in like a huge collection sometime in like the 2000s. And then it got adapted into TV show. Movie.
Yes.
Movie got adapted into a movie in 2000s.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna have an animated show coming up.
Yeah.
Which is quite cool.
The
trailer came out.
The movie is actually the first time I knew about Uzumaki. It was the first time I actually knew about Junji Ito.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So I was watching, the movie is fine. And I was watching it, I was like, I don't get the hype behind this Junji Ito guy.
No.
Like the movie is okay.
I kind of feel like Junji Ito, you can't do it justice with live action.
Yes,
Because
yes.
of the way the art is so involved.
I think even when it comes to like animation also,
Yeah.
like, well, okay, so I've been watching
the trailer.
not the trailer, but like Maniac, the Junji Ito Netflix series. And the stories are great. The stories are like, in terms of the actual stories themselves, it's still got that Junji Ito weirdness. But the anime, I see that's the thing with the art.
Yeah.
The detail of the art. If you're gonna try to do a Junji Ito animated, like whatever movie series or anything, right? If you're gonna try to capture his art, good luck to the animators.
They
That's-
just water it down.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. They
to be fair, I think they had to water it out, or they might have just like
Die.
shit.
No, not die. I'm so sorry. They might
Uzumaki
die
gone,
trying.
like, yeah.
trying.
yeah, it's really intense, like to animate like the art for Uzumaki, and like similarly, Geungsi also has like a really strong and like very stylized, interesting
Yeah.
style as well. And you also had your own
Yeah.
opinion for Geungsi, right? Like why?
Oh yeah, because like I said, so many pages, so many details, and actually I also like the story, but I'm not sure whether I can spoil it right now. Yeah.
Okay, only a little bit.
Okay, so at first when I first read it, I was like, oh okay, some old man obsessing about spirals and then hoarding all these spiral things, and then in like another few pages, then we basically know that he's basically patient zero lah for the pandemic called the curse of the spirals.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is something I did not foresee coming at all.
Like him being patient zero.
Like he's like the start of it all. Yeah, that's why I just call it a patient zero, because I think like the curse of these spirals is like epidemic. It happens in the entire town, and like sadly for this story, there is like no cure.
Yeah, there was no way to like really
Yeah.
get to defeat the curse in some way.
Sorry, I want to jump into that. Like that's
go
one of my
ahead.
favorite things about it is that there's like that sense of hopelessness. Like, again, I'm not gonna spoil any specifics or anything, but you can see throughout the book like people try to get out of the town, or people are like, oh, I gotta leave this place, and then for some reason or another, they never do, and that like sense of isolation. Like that for me is like, that's some sweet horror stuff right there.
So what do you think about your answer, your ranking for Uzumaki? Why?
Hold up my ranking one more time. So again, this is a best 0.5. This isn't best, it's best 0.5. It's I think it's because it hits my sweet spot for horror. Like,
Okay, so what's your sweet spot for
okay,
horror?
I feel like I know they're both horror books, but they're two very, very different kind of horror books.
Yep.
And Junji Ito's is more, I hesitate to say Lovecraftian because I know that that's not his sole point of influence, but it's the first point of influence that comes to my mind. It's Lovecraftian, but it's also weird, and it's more than anything else, I think the word that you can use to describe it is unsettling. And that's the kind of horror I really love. Thank you for calling me the horror expert, but I am by far nowhere near as massive a horror fan as some other people I know. But like when it comes to the horror stuff that I like, it's the stuff that jump scares are nice lah, but the stuff that stays with you, and then every once in a while you open your eyes at 3 a.m. and then you just stare into the wall and you're like, oh god, and you're thinking about like the horror stuff that you were watching or reading before. Uzumaki is that. It's like, it's not, I hesitate to give it the full shock rating, just because I don't see myself like lying awake at night and going spirals. But it definitely hits that sweet spot, so it gets the best 0.5. I will say, however, that after I finish reading this giant omnibus, my wife had made noodles for lunch. She was cooking it, she made noodles for lunch, and then I looked in the bowl and went, oh, okay. Okay, sure.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Like suddenly you just start seeing spirals.
Yeah, you're
everywhere.
like, yeah, I've never noticed how many spirals there are in a bowl of noodles before. Interesting.
In the bowl, Indomie.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Indomie.
I cannot believe I had the opportunity to like, Indomie. No, Junji Ito, you have not ruined Indomie for me.
Not yet.
No, nothing can ruin Indomie for me. That's
Okay.
not a challenge, I swear. But yeah, it's
Comments. Challenge him. Ruined Indomie.
yeah, it's I think that's why I ranked it higher than and I'm gonna mispronounce this and I apologize, Geungsi. I think it's because they're two different subsets of horror. Geungsi is more like action horror, whereas Uzumaki and I think Junji Ito stuff on a whole is more just like, I'm gonna show you weird stuff and you're gonna feel very weird while reading my comics. And you're gonna feel very weird, especially if you're reading my comics in public.
Yeah, for sure. Like I actually super relate to this, and that's why my ranking is also best. Because that lingering weirdness that it sits with you after you read it. okay, I mentioned this to Paul, and I feel like I mention this like all the time. I'm like a huge coward, and I hate horror. Okay, so I can I can read horror comics. I cannot watch horror. I cannot listen to horror. So I did not touch your podcast. I'm so sorry.
No, that's fair. My own wife hasn't listened to my podcast.
Yeah, I tried. I did try to go in and see like how much info I can get from this to like learn more about your storytelling and all that. And then I looked at like the contents like what Pontianak in Sembawang or something like that. And I was like, I'm not engaging with this. I don't want to know.
No, that's completely understandable.
And so when I went in, because I so refused to read them at night, Junji Ito did not scare me that much, but it left the unsettling feeling. I remember reading it halfway and being like, okay, I gotta stop. For some reason, like after I stopped, it just felt like my brain was overwhelmed by like spirals almost. Like it just stays with you. I don't understand. Because you weren't exactly seeing spirals around you, but you are left with this kind of deep-seated anxiety that's just here. Like I remember reading it, like half of it, while I was at the office, at my office, because I was like prepping for this and everything. So I was going down the escalator, and then the whole time, like to the station, I was just like, why am I feeling so weird? And it just stays with you, right? And the art is of course really, really amazing, but I like, for me it's a best because maybe that I think for me, I'm someone that likes a bit more of a straightforward story.
Yeah.
So Uzumaki is a bit more like an anthology monster.
I thought you were gonna say
week
it's
kind
going
of thing.
around in circles.
I was just gonna say it felt like a spiral. Like the story structure actually felt like a spiral because you spiral down and it's hopeless.
Yeah.
Right? So it just goes all the way down and you can't get out. And that is literally like a part of the story as well. Like you will find out like what I mean by that if you read it or if you have read it. But it's you go on that journey with them.
Yeah.
So that for me was very, very interesting. But I do like a bit more of a like direct storytelling structure. So it's a little bit less of a less shook for me lah.
It's funny you say that because like I think one of the things that appealed to me, and we were talking about this before we started rolling also. When I first read Uzumaki, I thought there were just 2 volumes. So thanks to you guys, I now only realize, oh my gosh, there's 3 volumes. And those first 2 volumes, initially I preferred them to the 3rd volume because they were each chapter was kind of a standalone thing, and you can read each chapter, like if you just read it as like a short story from Junji Ito, it's perfectly fine. If you read it as part of the whole book, then you see the bigger picture as well. But yeah, I think also to set my context for my rating again, why am I mixing up my own sides? To set my context for best 0.5 as well, the reason why it doesn't hit the shock marker is I think my own internal understanding of scariness has been warped a little bit.
Okay.
So I am a coward like you.
Wow, really?
In real life, I am a coward.
Wow.
Like when I write Ghost Map scripts, I cannot write them at night. When Kyle, the co-creator for Ghost Maps, when he tells me, oh, I'm gonna go shoot some visuals for the YouTube version of Ghost Maps tonight at this and this place.
I'm sorry, he shoots them himself?
Oh, he shoots them himself.
At like abandoned buildings?
Yeah.
Okay, guy is brave.
He's very brave. When we first started, he would ask me, do you want to follow me and we go to this and this place, this and this abandoned building?
Okay, we're no longer talking about the book.
Oh no.
Yeah, but just learn more about Ghost Maps.
To be fair, it does help set a little bit of context as well. When he asked me to do that, I'll be like, no man, you're on your own. Have fun. I hope you come back alive. But you're on your own. So when it comes to like experiencing scary places or scary things around me, I'm an absolute coward. But when it comes to stories, and this is why Uzumaki only gets the best 0.5. I say that like it's such a low rating, it's best. Because when I was a kid, when I was 6, I very specifically remember the year. My brother brought home like this VHS tape. Now I'm aging myself, by the way. He brought home this VHS tape. I don't know whether he rented it or he like got it from a sketchy friend. And he asked me to join him to watch this movie. He described it as, it's like Terminator. So I thought to myself, cool, robots. It wasn't like Terminator. It was The Exorcist. He made me watch The Exorcist when I was 6.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And it was only like around halfway through the movie that I realized, oh no, it's not, there are no robots showing up here.
Oh no.
Yeah.
None.
So like, I think that's kind of like screwed up my fear levels in terms of horror books or horror stories or all that. But if you ask me to go to like a scary place, no.
Yeah, I'm not about going to scary places, especially at night. Like if he was filming all those like thumbnails and all that himself at night, my god. I look at the thumbnail, I already don't want to watch. I'm sorry.
In the day,
I'm scared lah. I'm like that one.
It's fine. In the day as well, I'll probably like walk away from all the buildings that you're shooting. So yeah.
So, as a horror storyteller, so who writes stories, then what do you think is a good horror story or a comic? To set off lah, like our conversation also.
Yeah, give me the simple questions. Huh?
Yeah, very simple. Expert.
To be fair, I actually still find it very weird when people call me like, oh, horror expert, horror writer. I still don't think of myself as that. Even though after 3 years of Ghost Maps and like a book literally about Pontianak, Manananggal and all that, right? Technically, I guess I can call myself a horror writer. But I think horror stories, I guess it's two things for horror stories in general. And the first one's going to sound like a real cop-out, but I think you need very good characters. Whether it's the people fighting the monsters, whether it's the monsters themselves. I think if you don't make people care about the characters in your story, when the scary stuff happens, right, they're not going to care about that either. Because like, if I don't care if you're going to get eaten by a monster because I didn't care about you before. And care doesn't mean like, oh, I really like love you. It could even be like, oh, I really hate these characters. I strongly don't like these characters. But to me, like the best horror is when you can put yourself in the shoes of the characters themselves. The other one I think is the right atmosphere, which sounds very broad, I know, but it's, for me, good horror is when you can, and we were talking about this before, where it sits at the back of your mind. Like a jump scare is great, but a jump scare is just in that moment. If I watch The Exorcist now, I will still be scared, but I'll be scared for different reasons. And that horror kind of grows over time. So I think that's the best kind of horror, where it sits in your brain and you cannot stop thinking about it, and your own imagination sometimes does the work for you. Yeah, that's the best kind of horror for me. I think specifically for comics though, and this is a thing that I've ever since I started writing comics, I've noticed how important this is. Page turns. And I took note of this when I was reading both these, well, I guess because Geungsi, I definitely mispronouncing. Geungsi has 2 volumes and Uzumaki has 3 volumes. When I was reading all of them, I took note of like where they put the page turns. And Junji Ito is fantastic at this. Like every big like, oh my god, that's horrifying. Oh my god, why would you do this? Every one of those is after a page turn. So you build up the tension, and then once you flip the page, then there's the release of the tension because there's the horrible thing. So I think page turns are super important in comics.
Yeah, for horror comics.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. I think that's a really, really good point.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've talked a lot about Uzumaki now, which is very interesting because we've set up a lot of like storytelling with regards to Ghost Maps. So let's talk about Geungsi, which is also set in Singapore, which is kind of related to what you do as well, right? So just as a reminder, this is our ratings, okay, for Geungsi. Okay.
I still think like, oh, okay, there's so many details, like I said. But okay, like when comparing to Uzumaki, the details is not as much, but I still appreciate, especially like the buildings, the backgrounds. And I think that when it comes to like trying to like put a horror story in a Singapore context, it's quite difficult, I do think, yeah. But I still think it can be improved lah, like the cover. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, it didn't struck me as a horror story when you first saw the cover, right? Yeah. So when I first look at it, it's like, oh, it could be an action. Actually, it does have action, and so, but it doesn't like come across as actually like a fully horror comic. It doesn't. It does have like a mishmash of like action, horror type of story. Yeah. So that's why I keep it as best.
Are we showing the cover for volume 1 or volume 2? We're showing for volume 1, right?
Yeah, volume 1.
Volume
Yeah.
one.
So I agree-ish with what you said about the cover.
Yeah.
That's a very weird. I'm a writer. Agree-ish. I do feel like it focuses a lot more on the action side of things, because even when you look at that cover, it's the character looks like he's attacking you,
Yeah, exactly.
and I think that's intentional. I do think that Sean, because like we said, it's two very different kinds of horror, and this is definitely more action horror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I it's interesting that he's doing the very close-up shot of like the characters for volume 1 and volume 2. I'd be curious to see, because he's mentioned before that I think there's more volumes coming, right?
Yeah, there are.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see where he takes it, whether he's gonna still keep a consistent cover motif, or whether he's gonna try to do try to break out of the close-up shots of the heads. So
Understand.
I need a caveat that this is purely in terms of personal taste. I do prefer the unsettling horror to action horror, and it's clearly what Sean wants to do here.
Yes.
Like, it's clearly an action horror thing. Like from the get-go, you can almost tell. Like the cover is like action horror, and then you go through a few pages, you're like, action horror. That's definitely what he's going for. And you can see like the action is like for Uzumaki, for example, the any action or any like moments or like running around and everything, that's in service of the story. I feel like for Geungsi, the story is in service for the action. It clearly shows that Sean wanted to draw the action, and the story is there to take you from one action scene to another. Which is, I mean, if that's the soul, if like that's the main driving force for the story itself, it's still pretty impressive considering the fact that he could have just gone, oh, this guy hunting vampire, or Geungsi lah, I guess. This and this and this happened, and then he fights another vampire. But you can see he's building up like kind of a world, and then like there's this organization that fights vampires and everything. So I like, it may not be my cup of tea per se, but I definitely respect what he's trying to do in terms of like the story itself.
Yeah, like same for me. I feel like partially cause Sean hasn't released all the volumes yet lah, and I don't think we have news yet on when the next volume is coming out. So I'd say volume 1 and 2 is like a dip, like a toe dip into his world, where you learn a little bit about like his the way Geungsi operates within Singapore for one, which is very interesting, and like how normal people, even children, can end up Geungsi, like just, and what they would have to do to survive as Geungsi. So I thought that in terms of like what it explores in terms of like morality was quite interesting for a book that's set in Singapore. Especially like I thought it was quite fun. Okay, so both of us, we had like our Kenla rating, right? But when I was looking at this book on Kinokuniya, everybody was like 5 stars, best horror action comic set in Singapore. Oh my god, I loved it, set in Singapore and everything. I think the Singaporean setting is a very big deal, especially I thought it made the storytelling very, very unique. And later I want to go into this specifically, because when I read the opening of volume 1, I was like damn shook. For specific reason. But I think it's more fun later I talk about it when we actually go into the story, because now we've talked a little bit about our rating, right? So just now you talked a little bit about the characters and the atmosphere. So I think let's start a bit about the character first, especially the main characters and the protagonists, and also the antagonists as well, right? The antagonists for Junji Ito, I mean, being technically the spiral, it's not really a person per se. And then the antagonist for Geungsi is the Geungsi lah.
Yeah.
So what do you think about, like, do you feel like they're very effective protagonists at all, like, or what?
I mean,
Do you think about how they did it?
They're very effective antagonists for the type of stories that they want to tell. I think because it's an action horror, Geungsi is an action horror, you have to have, and you see Sean do this a little bit in the comic as well. There's the action trope of like the one-liners in there as well.
Oh yeah, have.
Yeah. So you gotta have the action one-liners for like not just the good guys. The good guys have the action one-liners, but the bad guys also have to have the action one-liners. And like you were saying also, it's a morality play kind of thing. You see Sean try to show multifaceted characters. So you see different sides of your protagonists. The main protagonist goes through a lot of like, you know, indecision. Like, am I going to follow this person? Am I going to follow this person? Do I pick another path? You notice me purposely trying to be vague and not spoil the book for anybody. But I think that stuff is very interesting, and I think that the horror antagonist, you need a horror antagonist for this kind of story that you can have a bit more. You need an antagonist for this kind of stories where you can have that kind of almost philosophical debate, I think. Yeah. But Uzumaki, it's, again, I go back to Lovecraft, and I don't think I'm speaking out of line because Junji Ito has said that Lovecraft was one of his influences as well. The spiral, there's no face to the spiral. I mean, the spiral does appear on some faces, but there's no one sole antagonist, and that makes it like, that adds to that hopelessness, and that, like, because you don't know what you're fighting. Like, you know you're fighting a spiral, but how do you fight a spiral? It's this almost like omnipresent, almost like overwhelming force of nature, I guess. Like, there's no way to fight it. How are you gonna fight a spiral?
Yeah, and it's like nature, and it's cosmic. It's in space.
Yes.
You if you read it, you'll see why like it's in space. I was a bit like, wow, we are thinking it's outside. It's really the outside of the people's control.
Yeah.
They can't do anything. They are like victims of this curse that just happened, right? Because like you were saying like Patient Zero, just one guy, he started being obsessed with spirals, and then from him it just spreads to everybody else. Yeah.
And like I think the best part about that also is because it, at least the first two volumes of Uzumaki are very much interconnected short stories. You see that happen, and you can see it kind of get ramped up over time.
Yes. Oh yeah, I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
I really like that.
And that, like, if there's anything, not anything, it's one of the things I really do like about Uzumaki is the pacing that he has, and it's the structure of it. Like I said, it's short stories but like interconnected, so that allows the pacing to, like, you have these ups and downs, and then it just, the tension just gets more and more and more of each story. So yeah,
the horror also builds up in a way that, like, we were talking about how it was a force of nature, right? It's almost like the spiral, like it starts very small, maybe from like objects, vases, insects, and then it starts going into nature, right? Like then it goes into space, and it builds up in that way. It becomes more and more cosmic, more and more uncontrollable. And that I thought was very interesting. Yeah. In terms of like that's the scale of that antagonist, whereas like Geungsi is very focused. It's more like individuals. There's more, how to say, individual action. It's more involved in that kind of storytelling.
I mean, not take any credit in terms of scope away from Sean as well. Again, it's Kenla 0.5, but I'm going to add another caveat to that. So it's caveat on top of the caveat. It's Kenla 0.5, but with the possibility of it going higher as more volumes come out. Cause
I feel that as well.
Yeah, because like the Singapore setting is great as an introduction. But the way he's setting it up, I think he's mentioned this before in interviews. I can't recall whether he has specifically said it, but I think he wants to expand it to like Hong Kong and like further out of Singapore.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. Because the community is much bigger than what you see through your protagonist's eyes at the start. And the world building, like I said, the world building, he didn't have to put in the extra layer. Because clearly he just wants to draw like cool action scenes, and he does that very well. Like there's an energy, like a frantic kind of energy to his storytelling with his art. But he does take time to slow down, and he does take time to build that world. So I do appreciate that. But since he's building the world, I really hope it moves beyond Singapore in volume 3 onwards.
Yeah. Oh yeah, speaking of the setting, I particularly like the Sean Lam setting. I've mentioned this in like other videos for the podcast before. I think it was like a video with Ling Ying where we were doing like it's like a post-season 1 thing where we were talking about more the kind of comics that we wanted to see more in Singapore. So one of the comics I wanted to see more in Singapore was less of the autobiographical type, more of the fantasy fiction, things that are like out of this world but also kind of familiar to Singapore.
Yeah.
And like I feel like I really got that with Sean Lam's story, because it felt very familiar and Singaporean, but it has a bit more, it still had a very international feeling. So anybody can still kind of dive in. You learn a bit about Singapore, but overall it's not the focus. But in the volume 1, I thought it was damn funny because, okay, a little bit of a spoiler this one, but the Geungsi basically takes the main character to this place in Singapore. It's Xiao Guiling, okay? It was so identifiable. When I saw it, I was like, it's Xiao Guiling. They go on like a date there. It's like they're gonna, have a little rendezvous. And I was like, my God, I went on a date too.
I assume
I walked there. Okay, I will say it's dark lah, so I walked there myself. Then I was like, then I like, it's very nice, very scenic, cause there's the hills. You don't really see it at night lah, okay, but it's the vibes are nice. So when I saw it, I was like,
your date ended better, right?
You didn't turn into Junji, right?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Okay. The joke my friends like to make is I'm a vampire lah. So.
Sean, is this comic based on true stories? I do feel that, and it is like going back to what you're saying, it is very tough to have these kind of fantastical stories in a Singaporean setting while it's still being recognizably Singapore. It's a very difficult balance to find. I think also, I mean, it was easier for Carl and me with Ghost Maps and Ben and me for Work-Life Balance, because we very much tapped into existing supernatural lore. So like everybody knows what Pontianak is. Everybody knows, or most people know what Manananggal is. If not, you at least know what the idea of a Manananggal is. But the Geungsi, because it's a vampire-ish character, it does and does not sit in Singapore folklore in that sense. Like there is a broader story for the Geungsi beyond Singapore's shores. So I feel like that's a harder balance to find for Sean. And for me, it felt, like I said, it felt for me like Singapore is ideal as a starting point in his books. But I do think that he can go much further in this. And I do feel like it's definitely worth going further. But you can still kind of keep that as like the center of the world as
like
well.
the setting, you mean that the Singaporeanness.
Yeah, the Singaporeanness is like at the core of the story itself.
Yeah, I think that's what makes the story particularly unique.
Yeah.
And like, because okay, so both of them are very setting focused, because Uzumaki is also like very town based.
Yeah.
Like it's all about that cursed town.
Yeah.
And every century, like it just keeps coming back. The spiral just keeps coming back. And I think that's also helps. It helps build the story a little bit more when you are able to relate it to your own life, making it a bit more realistic. And overall, like, it adds to the horror lah, because the realism, right, is what makes it kind of terrifying. Like, yeah.
I mean, it could go both ways as well. The realism, the fact that, like you said, you were walking in that place.
I know, yeah. It was like so funny.
Because I have had people like message us about work-life balance and go, I'm reading this chapter in work-life balance where you talk about Seletar, and I am in Seletar. And it was specifically in the place in Seletar that you're talking about.
Oh, that's really cute.
I was like, hey. I'm going to pretend like we intended that. But also I feel like on the flip side that Uzumaki works because the location becomes the antagonist after a while. So it's for very different reasons, but I feel like the settings work.
for different purposes.
For different
lah.
purposes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Lor. Like, were there any particular images within the story that you felt like haunted you? It's not a big spoiler lah. We're just gonna see some like really cool images from the comics. Any panels or the?
There were a few. I'm trying to think of the one that jumps up the most.
Maybe Nadrah.
yeah.
Do you have any?
I think it's volume 2. Where the mutated one, I think.
I will say that I think I know what my choice pick for volume 2.
This one.
Oh yeah, oh that's damn good. Yeah, same actually.
My choice panel also from volume 2.
For sure.
I'm gonna try not to spoil it, but I will give some details. There's a tub with heads in it.
Oh yeah.
You know the one, right?
I know. It's way at the back.
Ooh.
Yeah, there's a tub with like human heads in it.
Oh my god, like it's like a soup.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite intense.
It looks like the worst dumpling soup you've ever seen in your entire life. But yeah, for me, that, and I think this was also from volume 2. The other one that stands out for me for Geungsi is,
oh yeah, it's pretty intense.
one.
I think it's the other one for me
can
is
show it.
The volume
We
one?
will also.
Oh no. Yeah. The other scene for me that stands out is also in volume 2, and it's where one character sees two Geungsi in the reflection of a lift.
I love that one.
Yeah. That one for me was like,
Oh yeah, very very striking.
Yeah.
Volume 2 had a lot of really good.
This one.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good scenes, especially. I think it helps because they've started building onto the world.
Yeah.
It's like volume 1 is a lot of like setting up.
yes.
So they're not able to touch upon all that drama yet.
yeah.
Yeah. Then like I think you really also pointed out mine, so I don't think I need to go into like Junji for mine. I can talk about Uzumaki because there was I read most of Uzumaki, but I will say right, there was like about a few pages where I actually skipped over because I couldn't for some reason the illustrations for that actually like disturbed me. I was scared. The others I was like, this is just kind of creepy. It was okay, like the illustrations were really good. But this one, I genuinely like, I didn't look at it very long lah, and I won't look at it very long now, but I think for me it's because of the very similar to the realism. It might not affect everybody else, but it affects me lah.
Oh. Wow.
It's specifically because this one out of all the other drawings felt the most closest to our world than spirals in a person's face. Well, spirals in a person's face is quite fantastical lah.
It is.
But like a zombie crawling out of a grave and chasing after you, jumping in and following you in the middle of a forest is a lot scarier lah.
Yeah.
For me. So I kind of skipped a few of those pages of this particular art that I don't know why it affected me like that lah. But what about y'all?
For Uzumaki, there was a lot to choose from, but if we're looking at like stuff that's like, I like how I described it using my words. I think it was one of the first stories where a character basically turns themselves into a spiral. For some reason,
Oh my god, the dad.
yes,
Yeah.
Oh shit.
That
yeah.
in the tub just when he died.
I love how both my favorite scenes involve tubs. So he like, turns himself into a
tub.
spiral and places himself into the tub.
Yeah. Oh, that was messed up. Man.
Yeah, that one for me was like, I guess it's body horror. And it really does, like using that spiral motif and just doing that weird body horror thing. Like the most iconic one, not the scariest one for me, but the most iconic one is the girl where her face is turning into a
Oh yeah,
spiral.
this is the one that like everybody sees the most. Yeah.
Because when I think about Uzumaki, that's the first image
first
that comes to mind. I like that image, but it's nowhere near as disturbing as the guy turning himself into a spiral.
For sure. I thought it was kind of interesting that that girl one became very iconic because after I read her part of the story, I was like, this is one of the more like, a bit spoiler, I don't know, but like I personally my take, I found that one of the more underwhelming parts of her particular story. Like it's just a pretty girl with a spiral.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? And then the others was like, this guy, that, the patient zero that sets off everything. He contorts himself. Sorry, I hit the mic. He contorts himself into a spiral into the basin, and he subjects himself to that.
It's
It's messed up.
Yeah, the girl with the spiral. I agree with you. It's not that I don't like it, but it's weirdly enough one of the most normal stories.
Yes.
And I'm like, setting the bar very high if that's one of your more normal stories. But yeah, it does have. I think it's saved by that very iconic image.
Yes.
Because that's, I think, I'm not the only one. I think when everybody else when most people think of Uzumaki, that's the first thought that comes to their head as well.
Yeah, for sure. Like for both, like they're very, very strong storytelling.
Yeah.
Like, and also very strong art styles. Like with the iconic, Spiral Girl and everything. Like, are you a fan yourself of such comic styles actually? I'm curious to know. Like art styles lah.
I will go back to what you were saying just now about the level of detail.
Yeah.
I'm more inclined to Junji Ito's art style. Just because of the amount of detail. Like, I like Sean's stuff in terms of the action, but every page, I could literally go through this whole volume and pore over every page and just look. And you can see in some of the panels as well, there's just very subtle spirals on there. And that level of detail that is not just there for look at how good an artist I am, but that level of detail of I'm adding to the story by doing this. Like, even if you don't see it the first time, subconsciously it'll register in you and it just makes you feel all the more uncomfortable. And to have that level of detail, but to have that level of detail and done so well, that's like, man, full respect to that. But for Sean's stuff, I think it's more like, again, we've said this over and over again, it's more action horror. And my favorite parts of Sean's books are the action scenes, because clearly that's where he's put in more care. I'm like, this is not a criticism at all, but the rest of Sean's stuff is very serviceable to the story. There's nothing fancy about it. There's nothing that stands out that like, wow. And there's some level of admiration for that kind of thing, because like maybe he did prefer to go wild with the action scenes and then stick to very straightforward things, but to me what I see down there is smartly used restraint so that you focus on the story. But yeah, between the two of them, personally, Junji Ito stuff, like,
yeah, the details in Uzumaki is like phenomenal. Like you mentioned, like the spirals, like, yeah, I think like there were like some spirals here and there. It's like a foreshadowing to the actual story. Like you didn't realize the first time, and then like when you read it, you're like, oh shit, it actually is happening while the story is still progressing. And then it's something that I admire so much with the care of the details in every page. And yeah, it is something that I could never.
No, never say never.
No. It's true. I'm.
Okay, I mean Junji Ito is his style is so iconic. It's what he does lah.
Plus he's been doing this for quite a while.
Yeah.
So
I could never be up there, but I appreciate, I admire as well. I also love Sean Lam's this. He did mention that he does all this like traditionally. He didn't use computer at all.
Right.
Yeah. So imagine having to do this in ink and then not trying to erase. Me as a comic artist have to erase.
Yeah. I always admire any artists like now who continue to do things traditionally. In our previous episode, we were talking about Hong Teng. So Hong Teng, like he also does his art traditionally. So Sean Lam also. I'm not. I think
most of Junji Ito's
most of Junji Ito's are also very traditional. I feel like you can't get some of the textures that he does through digital work. And yeah, honestly, both these books are really, really great, and you guys should honestly check them out. Decide for yourself. Like, I mean, we had our ratings today, and we had our own takes lah, our hot takes or our own experience of the book. But you guys should definitely check it out yourself and see. Like, you can learn about Singapore through Geungsi. Of course, Uzumaki is very iconic. So decide for yourself whether you agree with us or not, and you can always let us know down in the comments. And I think this is a good place for us to end off. But before that, we have a special gift for Wayne.
Ooh.
Yes. Very special gift.
Oh.
Yes, so you have to do an unboxing on camera.
Is there supposed to be like some ASMR when it comes to unboxing videos? I'm not sure. Let's try. Oh, yeah. I don't know whether y'all can see this, but it's me.
It's drawn by Nadrah.
Oh, this is awesome.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you
No
so
problem.
much, guys.
No
It's so
problem. Yeah. Special little souvenir from us
cool.
here at Red.Comic Stand. Yeah.
My wife is probably gonna think to herself, "Oh, good. Like he needed more boost to his ego." Like, now he's got his face on a mug.
Yes, of course. It's merch, you know.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, no problem. Yes.
I shall now throughout the rest of this video, I'm just gonna hold it up like this.
It's like, yes.
Yeah.
It's me. It's me.
That's me.
Yeah, I think this is where we'll end off for today. Thanks guys for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. This is actually a special Halloween episode, in case you didn't know. So make sure you catch us again next time. Follow us on our socials, join us on Discord, and we'll see you guys again next time. Bye bye.
See you. Bye, guys.